I was arranging flowers in the church vestibule when I heard my new daughter-in-law talking to her friend about getting me declared mentally unfit. Standing there with white lilies in my hands, listening to Emma explain how she planned to take everything I owned, I felt my world shift. What happened next turned a perfect wedding day into the beginning of a war I never saw coming. If you're watching this, you're about to hear how a 65-year-old widow outsmarted a professional con artist who thought she'd found the perfect victim. This story has twists that will shock you, justice that will satisfy you, and lessons about family that might change how you see your own relationships. Don't forget to subscribe because this journey is just getting started. The morning of my son Michael's wedding started like every mother's dream. St. Mary's Cathedral looked magnificent with ivory roses cascading down every pillar, and sunlight streaming through stained glass windows created rainbow patterns across the marble floor. At 65, I should have been floating on pure happiness. My only child, my precious boy, was marrying a woman he claimed to love deeply. Instead, I found myself hiding behind a stone column, listening to Emma describe her plan to steal my life. "It's actually quite simple when you know the system," Emma whispered to her maid of honor, holding a champagne flute like a weapon. "Mental competency evaluations are easier to arrange than people think. Document a few incidents of confusion, get some family members to express concern, and suddenly you have grounds for intervention." Her friend looked uncomfortable. "But isn't that a bit extreme? She seems perfectly fine to me." Emma laughed, a sound that made my skin crawl. "She's 65 and living alone in that massive house. It's practically a public service. Plus, Michael deserves that oceanfront property after everything she's put him through with her controlling behavior." The oceanfront property. The house my late husband Richard and I had bought 35 years ago with our first real savings. The place where Michael learned to swim, where we spent every summer until Richard's heart attack 5 years ago. Where Richard had proposed to me under the old oak tree that still stood in our backyard. I stepped back from the column, my hands shaking as I clutched the flower arrangement. Emma spotted me across the room and gave me that radiant smile she'd perfected, waving like we were the best of friends. I waved back because that's what you do at your son's wedding. You smile and wave and pretend your heart isn't breaking into pieces. Michael appeared beside me, adjusting his bow tie nervously. "Mom, you look pale. Everything okay?" "Just emotional, sweetheart. It's such a beautiful day." The lie came easily after years of protecting him from disappointments. "Emma's been looking forward to talking with you about holiday plans. She has some wonderful ideas about new family traditions." "Bet she does. How lovely. We'll have plenty of time to discuss everything." Michael squeezed my arm and headed back to his bride. I watched him go, remembering the little boy who used to crawl into my bed during storms, who'd sobbed when his goldfish died, who'd promised he'd always be my best friend. That boy had somehow become a 34-year-old man who'd spent the last year defending a woman he'd known for 10 months over the mother who'd raised him alone. I walked to the reception venue's bar and ordered a double scotch. The bartender, a kind-faced man in his 50s, raised an eyebrow. "Heavy day. You could say that. Tell me, do you believe in justice?" He smiled while polishing a glass. "In my line of work, ma'am, I've learned that justice usually shows up when you least expect it." "I hope you're right." I finished the scotch, feeling the burn steady my nerves. Because I have a feeling someone's about to learn a very expensive lesson. 4 months earlier, Michael had brought Emma home for Sunday dinner. She was exactly what you'd expect a young woman to look like when she's hunting for security. Blonde, 29, with a smile that could sell ice cream in winter. Everything about her seemed rehearsed, from her compliments about my cooking to her questions about family history. "Mrs. Patterson," she'd gushed, "Michael has told me so many wonderful things about you. I've been excited to meet the woman who raised such an incredible man." Even then, something felt wrong. Too smooth, too practiced, like she'd given this performance before. "Please call me Helen. And it's lovely to meet you too, dear." We'd sat in my living room, Emma praising everything from my antique china to my garden photos. Michael hung on every word like she was sharing the secrets of the universe. How did you two meet? I'd asked, genuinely curious. At the community center. Michael jumped in before Emma could respond. She was volunteering with seniors, and I was there picking up forms for my consulting business. She was having trouble with some paperwork, so I offered to help. How romantic, I'd said, though something about his eagerness to answer for her bothered me. Emma had laughed. Michael's being modest. I wasn't really having trouble. I'd been watching him come in every week for a month, trying to figure out how to start a conversation. Finally, I just pretended I needed help with the computer. At least she was honest about being calculating. And what do you do for work, Emma? I have a background in social services, helping families navigate difficult situations. But I'm transitioning into wellness consulting now. Social services, mental health evaluations, difficult families. I should have paid more attention to those red flags waving right in front of me. Over the following weeks, Emma became a constant presence in my life. She'd show up for dinner without being invited, reorganize my kitchen cabinets to be more efficient, and offer advice about everything from my investments to my health routine. Helen, she'd said one evening while washing dishes I hadn't asked her to wash, Michael mentioned you handle all your own financial planning. That must be so stressful at your age. I've been managing money since before you were born, dear. Of course. I just meant with all the new technology and market changes. Maybe Michael could help lighten that load for you. Michael, who'd never shown any interest in finances before Emma arrived. Michael, who'd asked me for money twice in the past year to cover his credit card payments. I appreciate the concern, but I manage quite well. She'd smiled that perfect smile. I'm sure you do. I just worry about you being all alone in this big house. Alone. Like it was a disease that needed curing. The worst part was watching Michael change. My son, who used to call every Tuesday, who brought me flowers on Mother's Day, who'd spent weekends helping me sort through Richard's belongings after the funeral. Suddenly he was too busy for our weekly calls, too tired for our monthly lunch dates. Emma thinks we spend too much time together, he'd told me when I asked about our cancelled plans. She says it's not healthy for a man my age to be so dependent on his mother. Dependent. When he'd been living in my guest house rent-free for 18 months, saving money while he got his consulting business off the ground. 2 weeks after that conversation, Michael announced they were moving in together. Into the rental property I'd bought as an investment 3 years earlier. The house I'd let him live in temporarily while he recovered from his last girlfriend, who'd maxed out his credit cards before disappearing. It'll be perfect, Mom, Michael had said, pacing my kitchen while Emma sat quietly with that serene expression. Emma loves the place, and we can really build our future together there. That's wonderful, sweetheart. When would you like to start handling the mortgage payments? His face had fallen. I thought since we're family, maybe we could work something out. We have worked something out. For 18 months. Emma had reached across the table and touched my hand. Helen, I hope you don't think I'm pushing Michael into anything. The last thing I want is to come between you and your son. The last thing she wanted. But, of course not, dear. I'm just practical about business matters. Maybe we could do a gradual transition, Emma had suggested. Start with utilities, then work up to partial payments. I'd hate for Michael to feel overwhelmed. Overwhelmed by paying his own bills at 34. That's very thoughtful of you. Michael had visibly relaxed. See, I told you Emma would understand. She's amazing at finding solutions. I'm sure she was. Within a month, they'd moved into what Michael now called our place. Emma had redecorated completely, throwing out furniture that didn't match her vision and replacing it with expensive pieces that looked impressive but probably weren't. The utility bills stopped coming to me. The mortgage payments never started. When I'd called about it, Emma had answered Michael's phone. Oh, hi Helen. Michael's in the shower. Is everything okay? Just checking on those house payments we discussed. Right. We've been meaning to talk to you about that. Money's been tight with all the moving expenses and my business launch. We were hoping we could start fresh next month. Like they were some established partnership instead of two people who'd known each other for 5 months. Of course. Next month will be fine. Next month came and went. So did the month after that. When I drove by the house one afternoon, I noticed a brand new Lexus in the driveway. Michael's old Honda was nowhere to be seen. I called him that evening. "Nice car, Michael." Silence. Then, "How do you know about the car?" "I drive by occasionally to check on my property." "That's kind of strange, Mom." Strange. Checking on property I owned was strange. "Emma needed reliable transportation for her business," he continued. "We got a great financing deal." "How wonderful." "Speaking of finances, when might you start contributing to the mortgage?" "Look, Mom, we need to talk." Emma thinks. "Well, we both think you're being controlling about the money situation." "Controlling?" "For wanting my 34-year-old son to pay his own bills." "I see. It's just that you use the house as leverage, like you're holding it over our heads." Emma says that's not healthy family dynamics. Emma says. Everything was Emma says now. "You're absolutely right, Michael. We should definitely discuss healthy family dynamics." "Good. I'm glad you're open to feedback. Emma's really good at this stuff." "It's what she studied." "Yes, it was. And I was starting to understand exactly what Emma was good at." That conversation happened on a Wednesday. By Friday, I was sitting in my attorney's office, asking questions that would change everything. "Helen, are you certain about this?" James Sullivan had been our family lawyer for 20 years. He'd handled Richard's will, helped me navigate the insurance policies, drafted Michael's rental agreement for the guest house. "Absolutely certain." "Both properties?" "Both. The rental house on Maple Street and the oceanfront house." James leaned back in his leather chair. "May I ask what prompted this decision?" I could have told him about Emma's whispered conversation at the wedding that was still months away. I could have explained about the Lexus and the unpaid bills and the way my son now spoke to me like I was an inconvenience. Instead, I said, "I'm 65 years old, James. I want to simplify my holdings. These are substantial assets, Helen. The oceanfront property alone is worth nearly $3 million, which is exactly why I want them handled properly." James nodded slowly. "I assume Michael doesn't know about this." "Michael assumes many things. That's part of the problem. He'll be entitled to notification as your heir, of course. Not if I'm not dead. And I'm very much alive." "Legally, yes. But Helen, think about the family implications." I thought about Emma's laugh when she told her friend about having me committed. I thought about Michael calling me controlling for expecting basic responsibility. I thought about 40 years of sacrificing for a child who now saw me as an obstacle to his happiness. "James, what do you think happens when you keep feeding someone who bites your hand?" "I think they learn to bite harder." "Exactly. How long would it take to complete both sales?" "If we price them right, 60 to 90 days for clean transactions." "Perfect. Price them to sell quickly. I want this done efficiently." James made notes on his legal pad. "Where would you like the proceeds?" "New account, different bank." "I'll provide the details next week." "And Michael, when will you tell him?" I considered that question carefully. About timing and consequences and the satisfaction of watching someone who'd taken you for granted discover exactly what they'd lost. "I'll tell him when the time is right." James raised an eyebrow but didn't argue. We'd known each other long enough for him to respect my stubborn streak. "One more thing, James. I need you to research someone for me." "Of course." Emma Morrison, 29 years old. Background in social services. "I want to know everything." "Any particular reason?" "Call it grandmother's intuition. I have a feeling Emma's not quite who she claims to be." James made another note. "I'll have a report for you next week." I left his office feeling lighter than I had in months. Not because I was selling my properties. Those sales would hurt, especially the oceanfront house. But because I was finally taking action instead of just reacting to Emma's manipulation. Emma wanted to play games with a helpless old lady. She was about to discover I wasn't nearly as helpless as she thought. And unlike Emma, I'd been playing the long game my entire life. The call that would change everything came on a Thursday morning in November. Michael's voice was higher than usual, tight with something between panic and anger. "Mom, we need to talk. Right now." "Good morning to you too, sweetheart. How are you? Can you come over? Emma's at her office, so we can talk privately." Privately? Without Emma's supervision. "I'll be right there." I drove to Maple Street slowly, knowing this would likely be my last visit to the house as its owner. Emma's Lexus was gone, but Michael's new truck, another recent purchase he definitely couldn't afford, sat gleaming in the driveway. Michael opened the door before I could knock. His hair was disheveled, his shirt wrinkled like he'd slept in it. "We got papers," he said without any greeting. "The house is being sold. They want us out in 30 days. How strange. Who's selling it?" "Don't play games, Mom. You know exactly who's selling it." I walked past him into the living room. Emma had redecorated again since my last visit. Everything was white and gray now, cold as a morgue. "I'm afraid I don't understand your tone, Michael. Stop pretending. You sold our house." "I sold my house. There's a difference." Michael stared at me like I'd spoken in a foreign language. "This is our home, Mom. We've been living here for months. We've built a life here. On my money. We were going to start paying rent. We just needed more time. 8 months wasn't enough time. We had expenses. The wedding, Emma's business startup costs, the cars. Cars. Plural. How many cars do 2 people need, Michael?" He ran his hands through his hair. "That's not the point. The point is you can't just kick us out without warning." "Actually, I can. Check your lease agreement." "What lease agreement?" I pulled the document from my purse. "The one you signed when you moved in. 30 days notice for termination. James had you sign it, remember?" Michael's face went pale as he read. "I thought this was just paperwork. Family stuff. All contracts are paperwork until someone breaks them. We didn't break anything. You stopped paying after the first month. You bought luxury cars while ignoring utility bills. And according to my research, Emma's been telling people she owns this house." That last part was an educated guess, but the way Michael's eyes shifted told me I'd hit the target. She was just, people ask questions when you're not on official papers. She was trying to protect our privacy by lying about ownership. I folded the lease and put it back in my purse. "Where is Emma today, Michael?" "At her new office space. She's launching her wellness business." "With what startup capital?" "She has investors." "Do these investors know she's been living rent-free for 8 months?" "Mom, you're being ridiculous." "Or family. Family helps each other." "You're absolutely right. Family does help each other. Tell me, when was the last time you helped me with anything?" "I help you all the time. We have dinner together. I help with technology issues." "You've never fixed any technology for me, Michael. And our dinners consist of me cooking while you eat and complain about my parenting choices. I provide emotional support. By telling me I'm controlling. By canceling our plans. By screening my calls through your girlfriend." Michael slumped onto Emma's pristine white couch. "This isn't fair, Mom. We're getting married. We need stability. Then find jobs that provide it. We have jobs. Emma has a startup with mysterious investors, and you have part-time consulting work that barely covers your truck payment. That's not employment, Michael. That's wishful thinking. So you're punishing us for not being successful enough?" The accusation stung because it was so backwards. "I'm protecting myself from people who see me as a bank account instead of a person." "That's not true. Isn't it? When was the last time you called to ask how I was doing? Not to ask for money or complain about my behavior, but just to check on your mother." Michael opened his mouth, then closed it. "Exactly." I headed for the door, then paused. "Oh, and Michael, the oceanfront house is sold too. in case Emma was planning her retirement around that. The sound of him calling my name followed me all the way to my car, but I didn't look back. Some lessons are too important to soften with sympathy. I didn't hear from Michael for 3 weeks after that conversation. The silence stretched between us like a wound that wouldn't heal, but I used that time productively. James called twice with updates on the property sales, both moving faster than expected. The rental house already had 2 serious offers, and the oceanfront property had attracted interest from a tech executive who wanted to close quickly. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned. Then Emma called. "Helen, we need to talk." No pleasantries, no fake warmth. The mask was finally slipping. "Hello, Emma. How are you settling into your new living arrangements?" "We're staying with my sister temporarily. This situation is completely unacceptable. I'm sorry to hear you're having housing difficulties. Don't play innocent with me. You know exactly what you've done." Finally, the real Emma was emerging. "I've sold 2 pieces of property that belong to me. I'm not sure why that concerns you. Those properties were Michael's inheritance. Michael's inheritance will be whatever I choose to leave him when I die. Since I'm very much alive, he gets nothing automatically. You can't just cut your son out of your life because he fell in love. I'm not cutting him out because he fell in love. I'm protecting myself from a manipulative gold digger who targeted my family." Silence. Then, in a voice dripping with venom, "You bitter old woman." There it was. The real Emma Morrison. "I may be old, Emma, but I'm not bitter. Bitter people just complain. Smart people take action. Michael deserves better than this." "You're absolutely right. He deserves a mother who taught him to be independent and grateful. Unfortunately, I seem to have failed in that regard." "This isn't over, Helen." "Oh, I think it is. Unless you have something else to say." "Actually, I do. Michael's been struggling since you threw us out. He's been forgetting things, getting confused, having mood swings. I'm really worried about his mental state." My blood chilled. What kind of things is he forgetting? Conversations we've had. Appointments. Where he put things. Yesterday he couldn't remember how to get to the grocery store we've been shopping at for months. That does sound concerning. Have you suggested he see a doctor? I think the whole family needs professional help. This situation between you two isn't healthy, Helen. The way you're isolating him, manipulating him with money. It's textbook emotional abuse. Is that your professional opinion? I deal with these situations all the time. I know the warning signs. And what do you recommend? Family therapy with someone who specializes in geriatric issues and family dysfunction. Geriatric issues. Like I was some confused old woman who needed managing. That's very thoughtful of you, Emma. I'll consider it. Good. I'll send you some referrals. Doctors who really understand the complexities of aging and family relationships. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen for a long time, thinking about chess moves and strategic positioning. Emma was setting up her pieces, building a narrative. Confused son, isolated from manipulative mother, elder abuse, mental health concerns. She was very good at this game. But she'd made one critical error. She'd warned me what was coming. The research James had compiled on Emma Morrison arrived the next day in a thick manila envelope. I spread the papers across my dining room table and felt my suspicions crystallize into cold, hard facts. Emma Morrison had worked for Adult Protective Services in 3 different states over the past 8 years. Her employment history showed a pattern of short-term positions ending with voluntary resignations and sealed personnel files. More telling were the civil lawsuits. 4 families had sued her for inappropriate conduct during competency evaluations. 3 cases had been settled out of court with confidentiality agreements. But the most damning information was a criminal background check showing a conviction for financial exploitation of an elderly person in Oregon 6 years ago. The details were limited due to a plea agreement, but the victim had been a 78-year-old widower who'd lost his life savings to a scam involving his son's girlfriend. Emma Morrison was a professional predator who specialized in elderly victims. Picked up my phone and called James. I need you to contact Detective Rodriguez at the county sheriff's office. Tell him I have information about a possible elder fraud case in progress. Helen, are you certain you want to involve law enforcement? Emma Morrison has done this before, James. She'll keep doing it until someone stops her. What about Michael? Michael made his choice. Now he'll have to live with the consequences. 2 days later, Detective Rodriguez sat in my living room, recording our conversation on a small digital device. He was younger than I'd expected, maybe 40, with kind eyes and the patient manner of someone who'd heard too many sad stories. Mrs. Patterson, can you walk me through the timeline again? I told him everything. Emma's background, her systematic isolation of Michael, the financial manipulation, her knowledge of competency procedures. I showed him the research James had compiled and explained about the phone call where she'd laid out her concerns about Michael's mental state. This fits a pattern we've seen before, Detective Rodriguez said. Adult children are particularly vulnerable because the emotional manipulation makes them willing participants. Is there anything you can do? We can open an investigation, but we'll need evidence of actual fraud or elder abuse. Right now, it's mostly circumstantial. What if she tries to have me committed? Document everything. Record conversations if possible. And call me immediately if anyone approaches you about competency evaluations. After he left, I made a list of preparations. I opened new bank accounts and transferred most of my assets. I gave James power of attorney with specific instructions about what to do if I became unreachable. I installed security cameras around my house and started carrying a small recording device. Most importantly, I called my doctor and scheduled a complete physical and cognitive assessment. Dr. Martinez had been treating me for 15 years and knew my medical history better than anyone. Helen, you're in excellent health for 65, she told me after reviewing my test results. Your cognitive function is completely normal. Why the sudden concern? Someone may try to question my mental competency. I want documented proof that I'm perfectly fine. Dr. Martinez frowned. Is someone threatening you? Not threatening. Just positioning for future action. Would you like me to write a letter documenting your mental state? That would be very helpful. I left her office with a detailed medical report and a growing sense of confidence. Emma might be a professional, but she was playing against someone who'd had 65 years to learn about preparation and patience. The intervention came on a Tuesday morning in December. I was having coffee and reading the newspaper when I heard cars in my driveway. Through the window, I saw Michael's truck, Emma's Lexus, and a white van with medical transport markings. The doorbell rang. Michael stood on my porch with Emma, a woman in medical scrubs, and a man in an expensive suit carrying a briefcase. Mom, we need to talk. Good morning, everyone. This is quite a gathering for a Tuesday. The man in the suit stepped forward. Mrs. Patterson, I'm Dr. Williams from Peaceful Meadows Mental Health Center. Your family has expressed serious concerns about your welfare. How thoughtful of them. Emma moved closer. Helen, we're here because we love you. Michael told Dr. Williams about the concerning behaviors you've been exhibiting. Such as? The property sales, Mom, Michael said, not meeting my eyes. Liquidating major assets without any logical reason. Making impulsive financial decisions that don't make sense. I see. And this concerns you because it's not normal behavior, David's voice cracked. You sold our homes, Mom. You left us with nowhere to live. That's not rational thinking. Dr. Williams consulted his clipboard. Mrs. Patterson, are you currently taking any medications? Just vitamins and blood pressure medication. Any recent changes in sleep patterns, appetite, or mood? I sleep fine, eat well, and my mood has actually improved considerably. Your son mentioned you've become isolated, cutting off family relationships. I've become selective about who I spend time with. The woman in scrubs stepped forward. Mrs. Patterson, I'm Nancy, a psychiatric nurse. We're here to help. Sometimes as we age, we don't recognize changes in our own behavior. How old are you, Nancy? I'm 32. So you're going to explain aging to someone who's been doing it 33 years longer than you? Dr. Williams cleared his throat. Mrs. Patterson, your family has provided documentation of concerning incidents. Forgetfulness, confusion, inappropriate financial decisions. What documentation? Emma pulled out her phone. I've been recording some of our conversations, Helen. The things you've said aren't rational. May I hear these recordings? This isn't a trial, Mom, Michael said. We're trying to help you. By ambushing me with strangers. By getting you the care you need, Emma said firmly. Dr. Williams can evaluate you properly, make sure you're safe. Safe from what? From yourself. From making decisions that hurt you and everyone who loves you. I looked at my son, my baby boy who used to be afraid of thunderstorms, who'd cried when his pet hamster died, who'd once told me I was his best friend. Michael, look at me. He finally met my eyes. Do you really believe I'm mentally incompetent? I believe you need help, Mom. And Emma knows how to get it for you. I see. I turned to Dr. Williams. What exactly are you proposing? A 72-hour evaluation period. We'll run some tests, do some assessments, determine the best course of treatment. And if I refuse, your family can petition for an emergency commitment if they believe you're a danger to yourself or others. I looked around the group. Emma's expression was sympathetic but determined. Michael looked miserable but resolute. Dr. Williams seemed bored, like this was routine. How much does this evaluation cost? Insurance typically covers it. I don't have insurance that covers psychiatric facilities. Who's paying for this? Michael shifted uncomfortably. We'll figure that out, Mom. With what money? You can't afford rent. The important thing is getting you help, Emma said. Right. Help that someone else will pay for. I made my decision. Fine. Let me pack a bag. Relief flooded Michael's face. Thank you, Mom. This is the right thing. I'm sure it is, sweetheart. I went upstairs to pack, and while I threw clothes into a suitcase, I made 3 phone calls. The first was to James. It's happening. Are you ready? Are you certain you want to go through with this? Absolutely. Remember what we discussed. If I'm not back in contact within a week, execute everything. Consider it done. The second call was to Detective Rodriguez. They're taking me now. Peaceful Meadows Mental Health Center. We'll be monitoring the situation. Document everything you can. The third call was to my bank. I need to access my safety deposit box this afternoon before they take me. Mrs. Patterson, visiting hours are limited at the facility. Tell them it's a medical emergency. I need my medication list. I finished packing and made one more call to someone Emma probably didn't know existed. Someone who'd been very interested in my previous conversation about background checks. Detective Morrison, it's Helen Patterson. I think it's time we had that conversation about your sister. Peaceful Meadows Mental Health Center looked exactly like what it was. A place where inconvenient people got stored. Clean, institutional, with motivational posters that fooled no one. Dr. Williams handed me off to another doctor, Dr. Sarah Chen, who looked young enough to be my granddaughter. Mrs. Patterson, I'll be conducting your evaluation. I understand your family is concerned about some recent behavioral changes. My family is concerned about their inheritance disappearing. Dr. Chin made a note. Tell me about your relationship with your son. Which version? The son I raised or the stranger who's trying to have me committed? You seem angry. Wouldn't you be? Anger can sometimes be a symptom of underlying cognitive issues, especially in patients your age. Patients? I was already a patient. Dr. Chen, how long have you been practicing? 4 years. And how many family financial disputes have you seen disguised as mental health crises? I'm not sure what you mean. I think you do. She made another note. Let's try some cognitive assessments. Can you tell me what year it is? 2025. And who's the president? Donald Trump. Do you know where you are? In a facility where my son's girlfriend is trying to have me declared incompetent so they can control my money. Mrs. Patterson, paranoid thoughts can be. Dr. Chen, have you reviewed Emma Morrison's employment history? I'm not familiar with. She worked in social services, specifically adult protective services, evaluating elderly people for competency. She knows exactly how this system works. Dr. Chen stopped writing. How do you know that? Because I'm not paranoid. I'm prepared. Over the next 2 days I submitted to their tests. Memory assessments, cognitive evaluations, psychological profiles. I answered their questions honestly and completely. I also made friends. Nurse Angela had been working at Peaceful Meadows for 12 years. She'd seen every kind of family drama, every type of manipulation. Honey, she told me while checking my blood pressure, I've seen this movie before. Young woman, older man with money, family members who suddenly develop concerns. How does it usually end? Depends on how smart the target is. Most of the time families get what they want. Old person gets medicated into compliance. Assets get redistributed. Most of the time. Angela smiled. Sometimes the old person turns out to be smarter than everyone thought. Hypothetically, what would a smart old person do? Hypothetically, she'd document everything. Every conversation, every test, every interaction. She'd request copies of her medical records. She'd make sure someone on the outside knew exactly what was happening. That's very wise advice. I've got 8 years until retirement, Mrs. Patterson. I see a lot of injustice and I can't fix most of it. But sometimes I can help the right person help themselves. On my 3rd day, Angela brought me a manila envelope. This came for you. Legal mail. Inside was everything James had promised, plus something extra. Emma's complete employment history, including detailed reports from her previous jobs. 3 families had filed complaints about her conduct during competency evaluations. 2 had resulted in internal investigations that were quietly buried. But the most important document was a handwritten note from Detective Morrison. Mrs. Patterson, Emma is my half-sister. I've been trying to build a case against her for years. Your situation might be exactly what we need. Call me when you get out. I folded the papers carefully and handed them to Angela. Would you mind keeping these safe for me? Of course. Hypothetically speaking, when might you need them back? Tomorrow morning. I have a feeling I'm about to be declared perfectly sane. Angela smiled. Funny how that works sometimes. Dr. Chen delivered the news with obvious reluctance. Mrs. Patterson, I've completed your evaluation. While you show signs of stress and some concerning decision-making patterns, I don't see evidence of cognitive impairment or mental illness that would require continued treatment. How surprising. However, I do think family counseling would be beneficial. The dynamics between you and your son seem complicated. I'm sure they do. Your son and Emma are here to take you home. To face whatever Emma had planned next. Michael hugged me in the lobby, but it felt forced, performative. I'm so glad you're okay, Mom. We were really worried. Were you? Emma stood beside him, that perfect smile back in place. Welcome back, Helen. I hope you're feeling better. Much better. Thank you. In Michael's truck, Emma turned to face me from the front seat. Helen, I think we all learned something from this experience. Communication is so important in families. I couldn't agree more. I was thinking maybe we could have dinner tonight. Start fresh. That sounds lovely. Why don't you both come to my house around 7? Michael glanced at Emma. Are you sure you're up for cooking? Oh, I won't be cooking. I'm having dinner catered from that new place downtown. Great, Emma said. We'll bring wine. Perfect. They dropped me off at my house with promises to see me soon. I waved from my porch until they drove away, then went inside and made my phone calls. The first was to Detective Rodriguez. I'm out. When can we meet? How about right now? I'll bring backup. The second was to James. Execute everything tonight. Are you certain? Absolutely. And James, make sure the process server knows they'll be at my house at 7. The third was to Angela at Peaceful Meadows. I need copies of everything from my file. Already copied and sealed. I'll drop them by this afternoon. The fourth was to the catering company downtown. I need dinner for 6 people delivered at 6:30. Something impressive. Money's no object. I spent the afternoon reviewing documents and preparing for the evening ahead. At 6:30, enough food for a small dinner party arrived. At 6:45, Detective Rodriguez and Detective Morrison pulled into my driveway in unmarked cars. At 7 o'clock exactly, Michael and Emma knocked on my door. Come in, I called. There are some people I'd like you to meet. The look on Emma's face when she saw Detective Morrison standing in my living room was worth every penny this had cost me. Every sleepless night, every moment of doubt, every second of pain over my son's betrayal. Hello, Emma, Detective Morrison said. It's been a while. Michael looked between Emma and the detective, confusion spreading across his face like spilled ink. Mom, what's going on? Who are these people? Michael, I'd like you to meet Detective Rodriguez and Detective Morrison. They've been very interested in learning more about Emma's background. Emma's composure was cracking like ice under pressure. Danny, what are you doing here? My job, Emma. Mrs. Patterson, would you like to explain, or should I? I'll handle it. I turned to face my son, seeing him clearly for the first time in months. Michael, Emma has done this before. Multiple times. She targets men with wealthy families, manipulates them into cutting off their relatives, then uses her professional knowledge to orchestrate mental health crises. That's completely ridiculous, Michael said, but his voice lacked the conviction it had carried just days before. Is it? Detective Rodriguez stepped forward, pulling out a folder thick with documents. Emma Morrison, also known as Emma Wells and Emma Martinez in other states, has been under investigation for elder fraud across multiple jurisdictions. She was convicted in Oregon 6 years ago for financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. Michael stared at Emma, his face pale. Is that true? It's complicated, Emma whispered. That case was misunderstood. There were circumstances that weren't considered. What about Robert Thornfield in Arizona? Detective Morrison continued, his voice steady and professional. 81 years old, committed to a care facility after his nephew's girlfriend convinced the family he was incompetent. He died in that facility 4 months later, after signing over his entire estate. That was different, Emma said, but her voice was barely audible now. Or Harold Chen in Colorado. 79 years old, isolated from his children by his son's fiancée, who documented his supposed decline and had him committed. He's been in a facility for 3 years now. His family hasn't seen him once. Michael sank into my armchair, the same chair where he used to sit as a child, reading comic books while I made dinner. This can't be real. I'm afraid it is, sweetheart. I sat down across from him. The engagement ring she's wearing belonged to Robert Thornfield. She kept it as a souvenir. Emma's hand instinctively moved to cover the ring, a gesture that confirmed everything I'd suspected. You don't understand, Emma said, desperation creeping into her voice. These people were being taken advantage of by their own families. I was protecting them. By stealing their money? Detective Rodriguez asked. By ensuring they died alone in institutions while you spent their life savings. Michael looked at the ring on Emma's finger, then at the woman he thought he loved. How long have you been planning this? Planning what happened to us? Michael, you're letting your mother manipulate you against me. She's been researching me, trying to turn you against me from the beginning. Actually, Detective Morrison said, we found extensive files in your apartment. Financial records on the Patterson family going back 5 years. Property ownership details, your husband's obituary, Michael's employment history, even photographs of this house and the oceanfront property. You knew exactly what you were walking into before you ever spoke to Michael. Michael stood up slowly, like an old man carrying an unbearable weight. You targeted me. This whole relationship, our engagement, you targeted my family from the beginning. Michael, please listen to me. I do love you. You love my inheritance. That's not true. Detective Morrison stepped forward with handcuffs. Emma Morrison, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, falsifying medical documentation, and elder abuse. As he read her rights, Emma's mask finally fell away completely. You think you've won, she snarled at me. Your son will never forgive you for this. You've destroyed his happiness just to prove you're smarter than everyone else. No, I said quietly. I've saved both our lives. Michael watched silently as they led Emma away. When the police cars disappeared down my street, he turned to me with tears in his eyes. Mom, I am so sorry. I don't know how to begin to apologize for what I did to you. I looked at my son, really looked at him, and saw the little boy who used to climb into my lap when he was scared. Michael, I forgave you the moment you realized what had happened. How can you say that? I chose her over you. I let her convince me you were the problem. I helped her try to steal everything from you. You were manipulated by a professional criminal. Emma has been doing this for years. She knew exactly which buttons to push. But I should have known better. You're my mother. You raised me alone after Dad died. You sacrificed everything for me, and I repaid you by treating you like an enemy. I reached for his hand. Michael, do you understand how close we came to losing everything? Not just money, but our relationship, our family, our trust in each other. He nodded, wiping his eyes. She almost destroyed us completely. Yes, she did. And you helped her do it. Michael flinched but didn't argue. How do we fix this? How do we come back from something like this? We start over. Slowly. With honesty and hard work. The houses are sold, Michael. I'm keeping that money. You'll need to build your own life now, without my financial support. I deserve that. Yes, you do. But Michael, when you're ready to rebuild your life properly, not based on fantasy or shortcuts or what someone else tells you that you deserve, I'll be here to help. Why? After everything I've done, why would you still want to help me? Because despite everything that's happened, you're still my son. And mothers don't abandon their children, even when their children temporarily abandon them. We talked until almost midnight that night. Michael told me about the isolation Emma had gradually imposed, how she'd convinced him that my concern was actually control, how she'd painted every interaction between us as evidence of my manipulation. I told him about the research I'd done, the preparations I'd made, the fear I'd felt watching him slip away from me. She was so convincing, Michael said. She made everything sound so reasonable. Like she was protecting me from you. That's what people like Emma do. They're experts at making their victims feel like they're being rescued instead of exploited. How did you know? What made you suspicious? Honestly, it was too perfect. Her sudden appearance in your life, her immediate integration into our family. Her expertise in exactly the areas that would be useful for what she was planning. And she pushed too hard too fast. Real relationships develop gradually. Michael was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "What happens now? Now you move out of your sister's spare room and find your own apartment. You get a real job with steady income. You start paying your own bills and building credit and learning to be independent. And us. Our relationship. We rebuild it carefully. We have dinner once a month. We talk on the phone once a week. We learn to trust each other again, slowly. What if I mess up again? What if I make more bad decisions? Then you'll learn from them. But Michael, you're 34 years old. I can't protect you from every mistake anymore, and I shouldn't try. You need to learn to protect yourself." 6 months later, I was sitting on the balcony of my new condo, watching the sunrise paint the ocean in shades of gold and pink. The place was smaller than my old house, but it was mine completely, and it was peaceful in a way I hadn't experienced in years. Michael had called the night before to tell me about his new job at an accounting firm, real employment with benefits and a pension plan. He'd found a small apartment and was learning to cook for himself. He'd also started seeing a therapist to understand how he'd been manipulated and to make sure it never happened again. "I'm proud of you," I'd told him. "I'm trying, Mom. I'm really trying to become the man you raised me to be." "You're getting there, sweetheart." We had dinner together once a month now. Awkward at first but gradually becoming more comfortable. Trust was rebuilding slowly, like a bone that had been broken but was healing stronger than before. Emma had been sentenced to 6 years in federal prison and ordered to pay restitution to her victims, though most of them would never see their money again. Detective Morrison told me she'd finally agreed to cooperate with investigations in other states, which had led to charges being filed in Arizona and Colorado as well. The best news was that Harold Chen had been released from his facility and reunited with his children. His family had hired lawyers to prove his competency, and the case had exposed a network of corrupt medical professionals who had been rubber-stamping commitment orders. Sometimes justice moves slowly, but it moved. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Mrs. Patterson, this is Jennifer Walsh. Detective Rodriguez gave me your contact information. I think my stepmother might be doing to my father what Emma tried to do to you. Could we talk?" I smiled and typed back, "Of course. When would you like to meet?" People often asked me if I regretted how everything had played out. If I wished I'd handled things differently, been more understanding, given Emma more chances to prove herself. The answer was simple. Absolutely not. I'd learned something important during those dark months when I thought I was losing my son forever. Being a mother doesn't mean being a doormat. Loving your children doesn't mean accepting abuse or manipulation. And being 65 doesn't mean being helpless or naive. Emma had seen an easy target, a lonely widow who would do anything to keep her son happy. She'd been half right. I was a widow and I did love my son deeply. But I wasn't lonely, and I definitely wasn't easy prey. The sun climbed higher, turning the ocean from gold to brilliant blue. I had a consultation with Jennifer Walsh at 2 o'clock, dinner with an old friend at 6. And a book club meeting on Thursday. My life was full in ways it hadn't been when I was trying so hard to hold on to Michael's attention. Tomorrow Michael and I would have our monthly dinner, and he'd tell me about his progress in therapy, his growing confidence at work, his slowly improving financial situation. We'd talk carefully around the hurt that was still healing, but we'd talk honestly in ways we hadn't for years. Next week, I'd help another family navigate the treacherous waters of elder fraud, sharing what I'd learned about recognizing and stopping predators like Emma. Detective Rodriguez had asked me to consult on several cases, and I discovered a talent for spotting the warning signs that medical professionals sometimes missed. Being a mother means many things. Nurturing, protecting, sacrificing, forgiving. But it also means knowing when to stop feeding someone who bites your hand. Some lessons are worth learning no matter how much they cost. I raised my coffee cup in a quiet toast to mothers everywhere who'd learned the difference between love and enablement, to children who'd found their way back from manipulation and lies, and to second chances that sometimes came disguised as endings. The ocean stretched endlessly before me, full of possibilities I was finally free to explore. Emma Morrison had tried to steal my life, but instead she'd taught me how to reclaim it. That wasn't the lesson she'd intended to give, but it was the one I'd chosen to learn. And sometimes that makes all the difference. The phone call that changed everything came on a crisp October morning, exactly 1 year after Emma's arrest. I was watering the plants on my balcony when my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. "Mrs. Patterson. This is Detective Morrison. We need to talk." "Good morning, Detective. What can I do for you?" "Emma's been released early. Good behavior, overcrowding, the usual reasons. She got out yesterday." I set down my watering can and sank into my patio chair. "How early?" "She served 18 months of a 6-year sentence." "I'm sorry, Mrs. Patterson. The system failed here." "Does Michael know?" "We called him first. He's pretty shaken up." After I hung up, I sat watching the ocean waves crash against the rocks below my building. 18 months. Emma Morrison had destroyed multiple families, stolen hundreds of thousands of dollars, and traumatized elderly victims across 3 states, and she'd served 18 months. My phone rang again. Michael's name appeared on the screen. "Mom, did Detective Morrison call you?" "Just now." "How are you holding up?" "I'm scared, honestly." "What if she comes back? What if she tries to hurt you?" "Michael, take a deep breath. Emma's not going to risk violating parole by contacting us directly. But what if she finds another way? What if she targets someone else to get to our family?" I thought about that possibility. Emma was smart, patient, and now she had personal motivation beyond just money. She blamed me for destroying her relationship with Michael and ending her most promising con. Women like Emma didn't just disappear quietly. "Michael, I want you to come for dinner tonight. We need to discuss some precautions." "Should I call the police?" "Let's talk first. I have some ideas." That evening, Michael arrived at my condo looking older than his 35 years. The past year had changed him. He'd gained confidence in his new job, learned to manage his own finances, and developed the kind of inner strength that only comes from surviving betrayal and rebuilding yourself from the ground up. But Emma's release had shaken him. "I keep thinking about how convincing she was," he said as we sat down to dinner. "How easily she made me believe you were the problem. What if she's learned new techniques in prison? What if she's even more dangerous now?" "She probably is more dangerous," I admitted. "But we're not the same people we were 18 months ago. You're stronger now, more aware. And I'm certainly not the helpless target she thought she was dealing with." "What do you mean?" I smiled and pulled out a folder I'd prepared. "Michael, what do you know about the Patterson Foundation for Elder Protection?" He looked confused. "I've never heard of it." "Because it didn't exist until 6 months ago. I've been working with Detective Rodriguez and several other families to create a non-profit organization dedicated to identifying and stopping elder fraud." Michael's eyes widened as he flipped through the documents. "Mom, this is incredible. You've helped 12 families. 14, actually. 2 more cases closed last week." I leaned back in my chair. Turns out there's a real need for people who understand how these predators operate. And there's something very satisfying about turning Emma's attack on our family into a weapon that protects other families. "How does it work?" "We provide consultation services to families who suspect elder fraud. We help them document evidence, connect with law enforcement, and navigate the legal system. We also train medical professionals and social workers to recognize the warning signs." Michael was quiet for several minutes, reading through case summaries and outcome reports. "These people could have lost everything. Just like we almost did. And you stopped it." "We stopped it. Michael, I didn't build this foundation alone. Detective Rodriguez provided law enforcement connections. James Sullivan handles the legal framework. Dr. Martinez consults on medical competency issues. And you've been my sounding board for understanding how manipulation works from the victim's perspective. I helped with this. Every conversation we've had about how Emma isolated you, how she convinced you I was controlling, how she made her demands seem reasonable. All of that insight has been invaluable in helping other families recognize the same patterns." Michael set down the papers and looked at me with something I hadn't seen in his eyes for years. Genuine pride. "You turned the worst thing that ever happened to our family into something that helps other people. We turned it into something helpful." "But Michael, there's more." I pulled out another document. Emma Morrison's parole conditions include staying away from dating websites, social media platforms, and specific geographic areas where her previous victims live. But those restrictions won't last forever, and they won't stop her from finding new victims. So what do? We make sure every law enforcement agency, every medical facility, every adult protective services office in the country knows exactly who Emma Morrison is and how she operates. I opened my laptop and showed Michael a website we'd been building. The Emma Morrison database. Everything we know about her methods, her aliases, her psychological profile, her known associates. When she starts targeting her next victim, someone somewhere will recognize the pattern. Michael stared at the screen. "This is like a wanted poster for con artists." "Exactly. And it's not just Emma. We're building profiles on 12 other known elder fraud specialists. People like Emma think they're safe because they move from state to state, change their names, modify their techniques. But information travels faster than they do now. Is this legal? Everything on the site is public record. Court documents, arrest records, conviction details, parole information. We're not revealing anything that isn't already available. We're just making it easier to find. Michael scrolled through the database, reading case summaries and victim statements. Some of these people were left with nothing. Harold Chen, the man from Colorado. He's been in a nursing home for 4 years because his family can't afford to bring him home. Emma and her accomplices spent his entire life savings, including money meant for his medical care. That's not just theft. That's destroying someone's entire future. Which is why this database matters. Every case we prevent, every family we save, is a victory against people like Emma. 2 weeks later we got our first hit. A detective in Florida called to report that a woman matching Emma's description had been spotted at a senior center in Miami, using the name Elizabeth Martinez and claiming to be a wellness consultant. She'd been asking detailed questions about the center's wealthiest members and their family situations. "We've got her under surveillance," Detective Campbell told me during our video call. "Thanks to your database, we knew exactly what to look for. She's been cultivating a relationship with an 82-year-old widower whose son lives in California." "Has she made contact with the son?" "Not yet. But she's been very interested in the family dynamics. The father feels neglected because his son only visits twice a year. Classic Emma methodology. She'll position herself as the caring companion who truly understands what the father needs. We're going to intervene before she gets that far. Local Adult Protective Services is doing a wellness check on the father today, and we'll be there to explain who Emma really is." The intervention worked perfectly. The elderly man was horrified to learn he'd been targeted, and his son flew in from California immediately. Emma was arrested for violating her parole conditions by using a false identity, and was sent back to prison to serve the remainder of her original sentence. "How does it feel?" Michael asked me that evening. "Knowing that you stopped her before she could hurt anyone else?" "Like justice," I said simply. "Like the 1.5 years of hell she put us through actually meant something." But the real victory came 3 months later, when I received a call from Harold Chen's daughter in Colorado. "Mrs. Patterson, I don't know how to thank you. The Foundation's legal team helped us prove my father's competency, and the restitution fund you established paid for his care transition. He's coming home next week." Harold Chen had been released from the nursing facility and was moving in with his daughter's family. After 4 years of institutional care, he would spend his remaining time surrounded by people who loved him. "We're just glad we could help," I told her. "There's something else. My father wants to contribute to the foundation. He says he wants his experience to help protect other families." "That's very generous, but it's not necessary. Mrs. Patterson, you gave my father his life back. Contributing to your work isn't generosity, it's justice." That evening, Michael and I had dinner at our favorite restaurant to celebrate. It had become a tradition when the foundation achieved a major victory. "I've been thinking about something," Michael said as we shared dessert. "Do you think Emma will try again when she gets out the second time?" "Probably. People like Emma don't usually change their fundamental nature." "Aren't you worried?" I considered the question while watching couples and families at nearby tables, enjoying their meals without fear of predators targeting their loved ones. "I'm watchful but not worried. We're not the same people Emma manipulated 18 months ago. You're not the same man who was vulnerable to her techniques." "How can you be so sure?" "Because you just spent an hour asking me intelligent questions about database security and legal protocols. Because you've spent 6 months volunteering with the foundation, helping other families recognize manipulation tactics. Because you've learned to trust your own judgment instead of relying on someone else to tell you what to think." Michael smiled, but I could see he was still processing everything that had happened to us. "Michael, do you ever regret how everything turned out?" "What do you mean?" "Do you wish I'd handled things differently?" been more patient with Emma, given her more chances, tried to work things out instead of investigating her background. Michael was quiet for a long time, stirring his coffee and thinking. Finally he said, "Mom, do you know what I regret most about that whole experience?" "What?" "I regret that I made you feel like you had to choose between accepting abuse and losing your son. I regret that I was so foolish, so easily manipulated, that you had to become a detective and a strategist and a warrior just to save our family." "Michael." "No, let me finish. I regret that Emma was able to use my love for her as a weapon against you. I regret that I didn't trust the woman who raised me, who sacrificed everything for me, who knew me better than anyone else in the world." He reached across the table and took my hand. "But I don't regret that you fought back. I don't regret that you were smarter and stronger and more prepared than Emma expected. I don't regret that you saved us both, even when I was too blind to see that we needed saving. You learned from it. That's what matters. We both learned from it. And now we're using what we learned to help other people." As we walked back to my car, Michael said, "Can I ask you something personal?" "Of course. Are you happy? Really happy, not just making the best of things happy?" I thought about my life as it was now. The foundation work that gave me purpose, the monthly dinners with Michael that were genuine and honest, the friends I'd made through volunteer work, the peace that came from living in a space that was completely my own. "Yes," I said. "I'm happy in ways I didn't even know were possible when I was trying so hard to hold on to something that wasn't real anymore." "What do you mean?" "I spent years after your father died trying to recreate the family we used to be. You and me against the world, taking care of each other. But you were growing up, becoming your own person, and I was holding too tightly to something that needed to evolve. You think Emma could have manipulated me if our relationship had been healthier? I think Emma was a professional who would have found a way to exploit whatever vulnerabilities existed. But yes, if I'd been more confident in my own worth, if I'd maintained better boundaries, if I'd trusted myself more, the situation might have played out differently." We reached my car, but neither of us moved to get in. "Michael, there's something I want you to know. These past 18 months, rebuilding our relationship slowly and carefully, getting to know you as an adult instead of as my child who needed protection. This is the best our relationship has ever been." "Really? Really? We're honest with each other now. We respect each other's independence. We choose to spend time together because we enjoy each other's company, not because we're afraid of losing each other. Emma tried to destroy our family. Emma tried to destroy our family. Instead, she forced us to build something stronger." 6 months later, the Patterson Foundation for Elder Protection had expanded to include offices in 4 states. We'd prevented 27 cases of elder fraud, helped prosecute 6 professional predators, and provided resources to hundreds of families dealing with financial exploitation. Emma Morrison was serving the remainder of her sentence in a federal facility, and 3 other states had filed additional charges that would keep her imprisoned for several more years. But more importantly, her methods were now widely known among law enforcement and medical professionals. Michael had been promoted to senior accountant at his firm and had bought a small house 3 miles from my condo. He was dating someone new, a teacher named Sarah who worked with special needs children and had never asked him about his family's financial situation. Their relationship was developing slowly, carefully, with the kind of healthy communication Michael had learned to value. "What do you think of her?" he'd asked me after bringing Sarah to one of our monthly dinners. "I think she likes you for exactly who you are right now, not for who she thinks she can change you into." "Is that your way of saying you approve?" "That's my way of saying you don't need my approval anymore. You're capable of making good decisions for yourself." As I sat on my balcony that evening, watching the sunset paint the ocean in shades of orange and purple, I reflected on the lessons Emma Morrison had taught me without meaning to. About the difference between love and control. About the importance of maintaining your own identity even within close relationships. About the power that comes from refusing to be a victim. My phone rang. Another family in another state. Another potential case of elder fraud. I answered, ready to help someone else navigate the treacherous waters Emma had once dragged us through. "Mrs. Patterson." My name is David Kim. Detective Rodriguez gave me your number. I think someone is trying to manipulate my father, and I don't know what to do. Tell me what's happening, David. Take your time." As I listened to his story, I felt the familiar surge of purpose that came with this work. Every call was a chance to prevent another family from experiencing what Michael and I had survived. Every successful intervention was a victory against predators who counted on their victims being isolated and helpless. Emma Morrison had entered our lives intending to steal everything we owned and destroy our relationship forever. Instead, she'd taught us that we were stronger than we knew, smarter than she assumed, and more resilient than either of us had realized. She'd wanted to tear apart our family. Instead, she'd forced us to rebuild it on a foundation of truth, respect, and genuine love rather than fear and obligation. Some lessons are worth learning no matter how much they cost. Some fights are worth having no matter how difficult they become. And sometimes, the best revenge is simply refusing to stay broken. The ocean stretched endlessly before me, full of possibilities I was finally free to explore. Emma Morrison had tried to steal my life, but instead she'd taught me how to live it fully. That wasn't the lesson she'd intended to give, but it was the one I'd chosen to learn. And that, as it turned out, made all the difference in the world.